Everyone, today's Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. We have a special meeting agenda with solid waste headed by our director, John Phillips. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. First item of business is projects and a general discussion, starting with Athol Paving. Go right ahead, JP.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Phillips for the record. Thanks for having me. In regard to kicking off with projects, Athol Paving, currently we're still in the preliminary stages of this project. JUB is working on a grade plan before actual paving of the site will begin. We're also working on some geotechnical to make sure that the drainage is sufficient in the area. We already have ponding in the winter time when that parking lot runs off kind of roughly to the north. And so what we want to make sure is that if we pave the whole area that we won't end up with a lake. So it's likely that we'll end up putting in some kind of drain, but there's going to have to be an evaluation done to make sure that water will drain before we go ahead and seal off the parking lot. So that's where we are on that project. It's likely that this project will carry on into fiscal year 23, and the actual paving will most likely occur in the spring.
Okay.
Any questions about Athol?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Moving on to the Ramsey Transfer Station efficiency improvement evaluation. So Kootenai County Solid Waste has been working with Jacobs Engineering, and we're in the preliminary stages to take a look at some ways to really modify the Ramsey site and try to improve how we can get cars in and out of the site easier and the traffic flow to be better, just for increasing efficiency, getting more tonnage and more customers in and out. We did meet with Jacobs Engineering, walked around the site, discussed goals of the department, and also kicked around some ideas about maybe an additional separate transfer station or Z-wall placement or some things like that for future, for an extra crane operation where we could load more trailers and things like that. But Jacobs ultimately is under contract to come up with a few ideas. So we're just working on those preliminary ideas. And as they bring those ideas my way and we kind of start honing in on where the department wants to go with that, I'll bring that back to the board.
Okay.
Landfill right-of-way fixed. You've heard me discuss this a number of times before. It's a more complex problem than I thought. So I've emailed Worley Highway District about a couple of different options for how to fix our approach. There was a 100-year-old right-of-way that we built some wetlands on top of years ago. And so we're looking at some new approach angles that would work for the solid waste department that are just south of Belgrove Creek onto some of our property that we wouldn't really use for a lot of solid waste functions other than maybe a rural site someday. Worley Highway is working with the state of Idaho to come to an agreement on the best way to fix that, but speed limits and proximity to the bridge, come into play. So they're still working through that. It's a slower process than I anticipated, but you'll hear me bring this back up, I'm sure, in the future also.
Okay.
Any questions about the right-of-way?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so moving on to Fighting Creek landfill operations. So the garbage volumes are up at the landfill, and I'll get into that at the end when I hit some of the statistics. We're currently building a larger lift at the landfill, so that slows us down and kind of allows the guys to catch up on landfill cover and get plastic sheeting down and get our flows situated for winter. So the crew is working on those things as well as gas system improvements. We've installed a couple thousand feet of landfill gas perforated line in the last layer of garbage we put down for increased gas control this winter. So we're in good shape on that. We also are planning to install several acres of plastic sheeting to control stormwater, which will hopefully slow down decomposition so that we don't produce as much gas and have odor issues this winter. So the guys are staying very busy on that. We had some staffing changes at the landfill. At the last update, I mentioned that we had a new landfill manager. He's doing really well, very good in his position so far. And we have a new assistant landfill manager as well. And he is doing an excellent job. They're working really well together, strong team. I have high hopes for the landfill in the future. They're keeping a tight ship, Rand, so we're moving out down there. Overtime usage at Fighting Creek's been higher than normal. Currently, we're sitting at 248% of our budgeted amount. Sounds really high. We budget 10,000, so we're up 14,786 over the budgeted amount. So it's not a huge number really when you consider how many people were down in the department. Based on current projections, reports show that the department will remain under budget in regard to personnel for the remainder of FY22, and this is even with the similar projected continued use of overtime. Any questions about the landfill? So moving on to transfer station operations, we've been very busy at the transfer stations. The gentlemen behind me all work at the Ramsey transfer station, and they can agree with me that we've been extremely busy. There has been some slowing due to this recent heat. Safety is, of course, paramount. We want to remind the public that summer's typically very busy at the transfer stations. We will do whatever we can to streamline the process for all the customers in a safe and efficient manner. Customers should expect a little longer than normal waits. We are down quite a few people at the transfer stations, 9 to be exact. So we have been a little slower than normal in running some of the scale houses, but the employees have been excellent about bouncing back and forth between jobs to try to keep it as streamlined as possible. So haven't received any complaints out of a typical summer. There's been a couple here and there, but the crew's been doing a very excellent job, and it's much appreciated.
Good.
Moving on to staffing levels and recruitment. The solid waste department, just like other departments, has experienced quite a bit of turnover these past couple of years, and quite honestly, recently, we've had another wave of people leaving the department. Currently have 9 open full-time positions. 4 seasonal positions are also open within the department. So 6 of the full-time are solid waste techs, or what we used to call spotters, 1 environmental tech, and 2 equipment operators. And although this is concerning, we've so far found ways to continue operations at fairly normal levels. People, like I said, have been juggling between sites. We've been moving people between the landfill and Prairie to the Ramsey station to try to help out when needed. So there's a couple guys coming from the landfill tomorrow to work.
How many part-time open?
4. Well, it's seasonal, 4 seasonal.
4
so
seasonal.
Those are usually the seasonals we hire, typically a labor at the landfill, and then also people to help run some of the rural collection sites up at Athol and Chilco. So because we've been unable to fill those basically since COVID started, we've been having to use our full-time people to fill those positions. So it's been tough, even with increasing the wage by $1 an hour. So it's been tough to get anybody to commit to those seasonal positions. So
Okay.
moving on to overtime usage at the transfer stations. So far in fiscal year 2022, the transfer stations are above normal use of, far above normal use of overtime. We're sitting at 238% at the Ramsey site and 152% of the budgeted amount at the Prairie site. Again, this is about $10,000 total between the 2 sites, so combined between the 2 sites, above the budgeted amount. So it's not a huge number, and considering the amount of people we're down, reports show that the department will remain under budget in regard to personnel for the remainder of FY22. And this is even, of course, with the continued similar use of the amount of overtime we've been using. So even though it's been tough, and we're lucky that we have the good employees that we do have that have been sticking around, they've really stepped up, and we've been making it happen, even though it's not as easy as it was for the guys, and not as streamlined. And so we have received some minor complaints about like the site looking not as tidy as it used to, but it's difficult for these guys to keep up with, picking up all the litter all the time that's everywhere. We still do it as we can, but some of the jobs are being neglected slightly. So, any questions about the transfer stations? Okay, so moving on to rural sites, we do have a new hauling company starting up here October 1st with hauling the containers from each of the rural collection sites. So there's been some coordination efforts. Recently we met with Coeur d'Alene Garbage and also Sunshine Recycling, who will be taking over the rural haul. Coeur d'Alene Garbage is the current company, and they have about 150 containers out at our sites that they own that will need to be swapped. Whether that occurs before October 1st or after, it's okay with the county either way, but the 2 companies need to get together and figure out how they're going to do that. So we have a rough plan in place to make this happen over the next couple of months, and they are coming to agreement on how to make sure that happens. So, of course, the county just wants to make sure the garbage is picked up, not dumped on the ground, and that it's a clean process. I have every confidence that the two companies will come to an agreement and get that taken care of. So whether it's right by October 1st or half done by October 1st, that doesn't really matter to us, but we do want
So
that to happen.
JP said Coeur d'Alene Garbage.
Yeah.
Who's the other?
Sunshine Recycling out of Spokane.
Oh, okay.
So, but they're the company that's taking over. So, but there's 156 yard containers to move. So because they're so spread out, it takes some time to pick those up. You can't really accomplish that overnight, even if you have, several trailers that can haul, say, 7 containers at a time. There's still sites all over the county. So it'll take several weeks to get that done. Cameras, the solid waste department's still working on the installation of some live feeding cameras at our southern sites. So it was Mike at Kid Island, Sunup, and Worley, and those cameras are intended to help with policing enforcement, as well as enforcement, and serve as a deterrent when it comes to future abuse. We did obtain a quote for the Sunup base site, and the price came back much higher than anticipated, almost 3 times over what it was anticipated. So almost the total, it came back at $21,000 for one site. I believe we only budgeted $20,000 to do 3 sites, and we did obtain quotes before we budgeted the money that was only supposed to be about $6,000 a site. So we're working on modification to the quote to try to come up with a more cost-effective solution. I know that there was multiple cameras asked for, and maybe the resolution on the camera is a bit high. So we do want to capture license plates and be able to see loads so they can use that for enforcement. It's possible we can reduce the number of cameras. Maybe just get one right at the entrance of some of these sites so you can see people coming in and going and get their licenses there. So I'm still working on that. We're still planning on moving forward with that. That money will most likely be rolled over if we don't accomplish all this by the end of the year. I don't anticipate we will. I do want to get one site done by the end of the fiscal year, so we're still working on that. Most likely it'll be the Worley site that we move forward with. That's the one that has the most abuse. Any questions about rural sites? So moving into solid waste statistics, what I'm going to do is compare this year to last year. So 2021 January to now versus 2022 January to now. So at Ramsey Transfer Station, the customers are actually down 8.67%. And that's kind of surprising. However, we did do pit overlay. So we shut the transfer station down for a little while and repaved the pit, so that would have reduced some of that customers, but in reality it would still be down some. The tonnage is also down 7% at Ramsey from the same time last year. The Prairie transfer station customers are down 5.45% from the same time last year, but the tonnage is actually up. That tonnage is only up about 1.07%, and so that likely has also contributed to that same pit overlay because traffic would have shifted out to Prairie. So it's likely that'd be more of a flat number. Factors that may have also impacted some of this, and here I'm going to go back to that windstorm last year, but the tonnage was really up in 2021 because we had a pretty significant windstorm in the winter in 2021. And so when you actually look at the amount of tons going to the landfill, that's actually up. So the reason I bring up the windstorm is the recycled material didn't go to the landfill. So that's why we're actually seeing landfill tonnage is up. Garbage is likely still up at the transfer stations. It's just that wood's down. So the tonnage at the landfill is up 5.69% over the same time last year. And of that landfill tonnage, 5,144 tons we diverted to the landfill by having contractors direct haul. So we've implemented a rule where if a project is over about 10 dump truck loads in size, we direct them straight to the landfill because the transfer stations aren't geared for hauling demoed houses. So we have the contractors haul directly there. We do give them a reduced rate to try to cover some of those fuel prices and things like that. But just to let you know, that's equivalent to about 250 semi-truckloads that we diverted this year so far. So that's quite a bit. That's over a week of hauling on a busy week from both transfer sites. So that's quite a bit of diversion. That keeps that tonnage out of the transfer station so that we don't have to handle it, and then of course we don't have to pay to haul it down there. So looking at the rural sites, when we look just at Athol and Chilco, those are the only ones we can really track very reasonably. The tonnage is down, and also looking at when you look at all of the rural coming in, also it's down about 12% from last year. So that's fairly significant. So I believe that the reason we're seeing rural down that much is because of the effort we put in with the sheriff's department, and also the stickers that we put on that said no dumping on ground, no commercial disposal. And there's also signs up now that say patrolled by Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. So I believe our effort has really made an impact. So when you look at that, household garbage is thrown away at the rural sites, it's down 12%. And you go back to the landfill, it's up 5%. So that's quite a difference at rural. So good job to the sheriff's department, and I think our efforts are working. So moving forward with those cameras, I think is going to be important too, to keep the pressure on, and that way we just try to eliminate that abuse as much as possible at those sites. So with that, I made it to the end of my list. Do you guys have any questions about anything that's going on with the solid waste department?
So you were comparing 21 to 22?
Yeah.
So year to date?
Yeah, so January to current.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of each year. So looking at the 2 years, exact same time frame. So basically it would have been January
For
to
7 months. Roughly.
Yeah, I believe end of July, yeah.
Okay. Wow, interesting. So the tonnage is down and the customers are down.
So the tonnage is up at the landfill.
Up at the landfill,
So what
yes.
that tells me is the construction still is going pretty good, because we're making the construction guys haul there.
Right to the landfill.
And you see that the garbage is down at the rural sites, the 12%.
Yes.
So garbage appears to be down, but we stepped up enforcement. The customer counts are down at the transfer station, so that tells me garbage, household garbage might still be going down. It's just the construction that's still up there pretty good.
Huh. Interesting. Bill, do you have any questions?
No, I just have comments as usual. I think JP and the entire department is doing an outstanding job of anticipating the future and taking care of the day-to-day and doing it in a very professional way. And I know JP is head of the department, but I think each and every person there, he's got a great team that he works with.
We definitely do. I feel lucky to have the people that we do have that have stuck around through these hard times.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your efforts. And thank everyone, really. You guys just do a great job.
Thank you.
And I'm always reminded of, was it Doug Eastwood, who one time commented, I guess he had toured sites around, solid waste sites around the country, and commented that this might have been the best. Now, I don't know who goes on vacation and visits solid waste sites, but he does. And this reminds me of that. Anything else? Public comment? Okay. 10:19, meeting is adjourned. Good job, as usual. Thank you, guys. Thank you.